Hey everybody, this is Jon Croft with Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft, and I'm Jon Croft. How you doing tonight, Rebecca?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing good. Yeah, it's another Friday, another Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft and Rebecca Croft, and we're doing pretty good. Another week of repairs on on our house. We're working to do some. The reason I bring that up, by the way, I'm not just bringing it
Mhm.
up out of the blue. It's because there's been some construction going on, and I'm not talking about our house. I'm talking about, at this point, I'm talking about the Media Moses stuff. So, construction's been going on. It's kept us from giving updates on Media Moses as well as Media Moses Weekly. There's not a lot of content on Media Moses Weekly right now. I have some back issue videos from like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, that I could still put up. Kind of like little clips I could put up. But besides that, not much going on Media Moses Weekly right now. Media Moses only has a few things happening. We've talked a lot about updating the podcast, updating the website, updating, um, you know, expanding the Media Moses operation in a variety of ways. But currently, the focus is on moving into a studio. So we're working to move into a studio so we can get a lot more accomplished that way. It's a major deal for us to be doing this move. And so it's taking us some time, and we're making sure we get everything we can get out of this house and then moving over there. Looking at Missouri currently, and I have been looking at a few properties there. So we have some new plans for Media Moses Weekly coming up soon. Some edits, some changes going on, which have not taken place yet. This channel will also change eventually into what I call, we're hoping to make it into a community-driven live read feed channel, um, which will change the format a little bit. We're hoping to go live more in the future and feed the traffic into our other channels and our website, etc. And so, um, let's see. And Media Moses Weekly will focus on news and industry news, and then eventually we're looking towards making Media Moses Weekly a news, interview, and behind the scenes channel. So, a little bit of industry news on that channel, hoping to keep it simple, straightforward, to the point, short videos. Then, as some of you know, we have other podcasts in the works. I've talked with multiple people about starting a film development channel called Development Heaven, a film analysis channel called Why Christian Film, which compares Christian film, aka faith-based film, with secular films, matching them up toe to toe. Cultural Exodus is not a planned podcast exactly, but it is kind of another show we have planned. It's more of a documentary web series, you could call it,
Right.
docu-series. Timely interviews is something we have planned farther off in the future when I get a, host to do interviews, and that will probably actually be on the Media Moses Weekly channel, not have its own channel. Additional shows are being planned, and so I'm not sure if that's in association with Media Moses, probably more in association with Trithia Film. So our Trithia Film podcast is called Development Heaven. It's about directly making film and developing it in particular. And then we might do some behind the scenes stuff on the side with that channel. with the shows we're working on. We can't mention a lot of the shows we have planned or that are on the docket. Some of these are very involved. Some of them are shorter, like web series or shorts, but we have a ton planned. And the reason I'm mentioning this now, as I stated, is that moving to a studio is going to start making a lot of this stuff a lot more possible for us. And so you're going to start seeing a lot of development projects happening and how we're going to produce them, how we're going to fund them and distribute them. All of that is up in the air. We do have some ideas and plans on how to do that, how to plan that out. Some of this stuff we can talk about in our topic today, which I've named How Mark Judge is Working to Replace Hollywood. But that's an article that Mark Judge wrote on Hot Air. And so if you want to check out Hot Air, they've got some articles on there. Suffice to say, let's just get into it and we'll talk about some of this other stuff as well. Was there something that you wanted to talk about? Is this kind of a media experience, Rebecca?
Well, we were talking a little bit this morning about some characters from history, and I've been
Mhm.
reading this book to the kids. I think I mentioned it before, The Story of the Greeks. And
Yeah,
this is a really great book. It's actually from the late 1800s, but they've been reprinting it. Um,
it's a great summation of Greek history for what age group would you say? Maybe 10, 12,
yeah,
like
yeah, that's a great
that.
age group for it. It's just very well written. It's not written like a textbook. It's written in a more lively way, but it does
Storybook.
also use
Yeah.
older language. Um, However, the thing we were talking about, which was so interesting, was the um, the thing that happened with Socrates, where Socrates was fell out of favor with the Greeks and was asked to, was it drink hemlock? Was that what it
I
was?
think it was drinking hemlock. Yeah. Basically kill himself.
Yeah. And how that happened because he initially was so popular
Yeah.
and loved by the Greeks and specifically the Athenians. And so we started kind of unfolding that story and it was just so interesting to us. So I'll just tell the story really briefly
Yeah.
and
A
then
few other characters are involved, aren't they?
yeah, so Socrates happened to be friends with Alcibiades, which is he was a um I guess you could say like a playboy. He was just like
A noble,
a noble.
rich kid kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was just doing, whatever he wanted with his life, just living
Mhm.
wild. And Socrates was just he wasn't really about that. Socrates was kind of trying to teach
Yeah.
his followers to live more moderately. Um, but nevertheless, the two were good friends. And Aristophanes, who was a playwright at the time, uh,
Very popular playwright. Yeah.
yes, he just thought it was very humorous to see these two together because they were so they were in such contrast to each other.
Well,
Alcibiades,
essentially, he was the Jimmy Kimmel of his day,
okay, yeah.
right?
So
Late night comedy, guys, right over here.
yes, there you go. So Alcibiades is living a lavish lifestyle. Socrates is living this humble lifestyle. And it's like, what do the two have to do with each other? But yet they were friends. And so Aristophanes wrote a play about these characters, not using the real names, but everyone knew who he was referring to, in
Yeah.
which he implied, or basically came right out and said that this supposed noble tutor was actually
Corrupting.
corrupting the young men of the day by teaching them to live these wild, lavish lifestyles, which of course wasn't true at all. And so that's why it was funny because it wasn't at all accurate, and everyone knew that. But the problem was this play was so popular that it went on for like 20 years. And over time, people eventually start to quote, like people love this play so much, they're quoting it to each other.
Hmm.
And over time, it starts to kind of become truth to people. They start to see
Yeah,
it as this is actual reality.
right.
And a lot of things
Well,
happen.
especially because this Playboy is very infamous fellow, which has made things difficult quite often for the Athenians. I think he joined with Sparta for a little while, right, to plot against the Athenians, and then turned in the opposite direction to defend the Athenians.
Yeah.
His actions, because he was an influential noble, kind of aristocrat by this time, his actions had a great impact on Greek life, especially the Athenians. So he was this infamous character that was larger than life. And this can bring you into the whole mimetic rivalry situation in which the Greeks don't know what to make of this character. He's either a villain or a hero, but he's nothing moderate in their mind, And so, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but
That's good.
yeah,
So basically, he winds up kind of betraying his people
right.
and through some military things that were going on. And so the people are just outraged and they want to punish someone. So they decide they're going to punish Socrates because
Because
he
he was his teacher.
supposedly
Yeah,
taught all the youth to live wild, lavish lifestyles, which of
right.
course isn't true at all. And so,
The opposite is true. Yeah.
yeah. And so we just thought that was really interesting the way they loved Socrates and then turned on him, and then years later decided they loved him again and made
Well,
statues
and
of him.
the sensibilities of the public could turn on a dime.
Yes.
But Aristophanes had solidified this idea in the mind of the public that there was something wrong with the two of these guys,
Yeah.
and so Socrates must be punished, and this is literally what kills him.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that Aristophanes was directly responsible for Socrates being killed, but indirectly responsible, certainly. And likewise with Kimmel right now.
Hmm.
So he's partly responsible for the heated the untrue rhetoric, right, can harm many people, right? And the wider that his fame is, the more impactful it is. So Kimmel obviously has wide fame through television, so a far more impactful medium than just in person in Athens doing a play, right? But you could say the 20 years of that might be equivalent
Yeah.
to Kimmel's reach. And obviously, I'm not saying that Kimmel is as talented as Aristophanes. Aristophanes is studied today still by theater kids, so they know who he is. He makes bawdy comedies, which are very popular. It's comparable to late night in a way, late
Mhm.
night kind of comedy, and it's not meant to be taken seriously because it skewers the Greeks in many ways, and the Greeks, because it was not serious, the Greeks didn't always take it seriously. But the more this gets done, right, the more this gets kind of put in the face of the Greeks, the more they go crazy about it. And um, all they can conclude, right, is that Socrates uh, had a great impact on this aristocrat's life, which damaged the Athenians.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting conundrum. You could say that the answer to all these things is moderation, which is kind of more like Socrates's answer, right? So Aristophanes and this aristocrat, what's the aristocrat's name again?
Alcibiades.
Is that how you pronounce it?
There's
Alcibiades.
there's some debate on how to pronounce it.
The C or the
Alcibiades.
K sound. Sometimes I forget with Greek.
Yeah.
I think I thought was Alcibiades or something like that.
That's
But
how I was saying it, and then I looked it up and realized I was wrong.
maybe it was Alcibiades. I don't know.
Yeah, Alcibiades.
But Aristophanes and Alcibiades were far less moderate than Socrates. They were having fun with what they're doing, going to extremes with their storytelling and with their impact on society. And Socrates is sitting back here, moderate and thoughtful and rational, and he's the one who gets punished for the extremities of these other two guys, for their extreme behavior. So that there needs to be a lesson there for people, right? That moderation is better with these kinds of things. It's often better with aesthetic. It's often better with storytelling. It's often better with politics, and with the military and things like this. With all these kinds of things in society, it's good to do that. And I think Socrates had the answer. Even though Socrates wasn't a Christian, Christianity didn't really exist at this time. A lot a lot of things like moderation um, were still known about at this time, and they were still seen as a positive effect on society. But for the Greeks, this wasn't quite always the case. You went from the extreme hedonistic lifestyle sometimes to the Stoics on the other end of the spectrum. Often being in the middle was just boring for them, and you weren't going to get much fame for that. So fame was pretty important to a lot of the Greeks. But these thinkers, right, the poets, often had just as little incentive to be moderate as any of these other guys. They would make lavish theories, Pythagoras and all these other Gnostic cults, quite extreme in many of the theories. But so the reason I think that Socrates, Aristotle, and the like were became more famous is because they were more moderate in many ways. Maybe not Plato in some ways, other ways pretty extreme. But yeah, it's really quite a lesson, isn't it? When you read these stories and they can be quite interesting with,
Yeah,
especially with the result of what they decide to do. Like you're
yeah,
gonna have to drink this poison,
yeah,
kind of legendary story.
yeah. It's
Makes me
very,
think of Blaise Pascal a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah, how he was trapped in between the church and the scientific community, trapped between the Christian and non-Christian community. And at a time in the 1600s where law was changing, the church was changing, science was changing, and he was trying to find a moderate place in the middle of all that, you know, and while suffering physically through a lot of it and suffering with ailment. That was an interesting story as well. There's a lot of lessons there.
yeah. It's very educational reading about the Greeks and democracy, the early days of democracy, and
Yep.
um, I learn a lot.
I think we even said that the Greeks had a level of knowledge and inquisitiveness about truth to such a degree that maybe even it was the influence that they gathered from the Jews and through a roundabout way, possibly through Persia, which influenced them to be more moderate, more truth-seeking, because Jewishness, of course, getting the law from God and being the kind of people who were well-read and often used moderation principles within their poetry, their wisdom poetry. Maybe they gathered some kind of wisdom, right, from the Jewish wisdom literature or something. Or maybe God himself gifted the Greeks with some kind of greater capacity for knowledge. And why would God do this? To make ready the way for Christianity to come.
Yeah,
Because Christianity was a deeper, more acute synthesis of truth which was already coming from Judaism, right? But it was just a more acute sensitivity to truth so that
Yeah.
Christ could be revealed. Like, who is the real Messiah? Who is the real answer to these issues in Israel and the world? Well, it's Christ. But his people need to be ready for that, right? New wineskins for new wine. That's one of the analogies Christ would use with his new church, right? They had to be new wineskins. So, really interesting ancient history studies going on there.
Yeah, yeah, and to your point, there's definitely certain moments where you're reading about the Greeks and they're just kind of doing the usual kind of pagan thing, like seeking
Right.
oracles and honoring the gods, and then you will find a character or a story where there's something that kind of rises above it, like Socrates, for instance, said that he believed that there was one God who created
Right.
everything,
Right.
and this one God was good.
Hmm.
And so that's very
Almost unheard of at that time. Yeah.
yeah, that's very interesting, like, and unique that he came up with this idea. And then there's also the story of these two friends. I can't think of their names off the top of my head, but they basically, one of the friends had to lay down his life for the other friend.
Yeah.
And actually,
Crucified even, right? Was he crucified?
he was going to be crucified. And so he was literally going to be crucified for his friend, which is so
Christ
powerful because
says. Yeah, that's true
he
friendship.
says, greater love has no man than this, that he would die for his friends.
Yes.
So that's just amazing. I think there's little glimpses here and there throughout history of awakenings
Mm.
to God, and or God revealing himself. Um, and
Even before Christ came. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. So we'll talk about how this story with Mark Judge. Many people don't know who Mark Judge is. If they do, it's because of some political thing. Because back in 2018, I think his name was uh, Brett Kavanaugh, who got elected as, not elected, but appointed by President Trump in his first term, appointed Brett Kavanaugh as Supreme Court Justice. And so then he had to go through this big scandal, tons of lies to wade through. And one of the people who gets caught in the crossfire is Mark Judge, because Mark Judge was also implicated in these false accusations about Brett Kavanaugh. And he was also thrown in the bucket to be eaten by sharks in order to prevent Brett Kavanaugh from becoming a justice. And so Mark Judge is a writer. He wrote a book. Actually, let me share this article that Mark writes here. Okay, well, Christian Toto shared the article here. How I Killed a Leftist Hollywood Movie and How Conservatives Should Replace It. Here it is on Hot Air. How I Killed a Leftist Hollywood Movie and How Conservatives Should Replace It. In 2023, shortly after the Sundance Film Festival, I spiked a movie from a major Hollywood director. The movie Justice is about Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and his crazy nomination in 2018. The director of Justice is Doug Liman, who kept its existence a secret for years before premiering it at Sundance to a sold-out theater surrounded by guards. This makes some people think of the Savant, I think. Some people will think of the movie Savant that Apple was going to release and shelved only this last week because it's also about a politically divisive issue. This movie Justice, right? Let's see what he says here about it. How I Spiked Justice and How Conservatives Should Create Art in Its Place is the central cultural question of our time. You hear that, everybody? It's the central cultural question of our time. And I've been telling people how important this is, but he makes it a point in this article about how to do this. but he's, of course, talking from his own perspective on how to do this. So what does he say? Hot air readers know I'm doing my part by planning an anti-communist film festival. Oh, wow. So let's take a look. So anti-communist festival. This is another, there's another article. And he lists some anti-communist films. I still have to read this, but I don't know where it's going to be, if it's in LA. But supposedly he's got this anti-communist film festival he's hoping to make. Festival, we probably need one desperately because it is a major problem. So back to the article. He says he's doing his part by planning this ACFF, so to speak. Yet to build culture takes resources and funding. Boy, that's honest, so true. To be honest, I'm tired of being in the trenches fighting for art without any help from conservatives who cry for the kind of cultural change I'm attempting, but offer no support for that change. They need to stop talking and writing white papers and start writing checks. Wow, so true. Okay, so he goes into his story in 2022, weeks before the documentary Justice premiered at Sundance. I got a text from Doug Liman. Liman, the director of Justice, wanted me to come to New York right away, like now, to be interviewed for a film he was working on. I'm an 80s guy like you, Lyman cajoled. I'm doing a documentary about Brett Kavanaugh. I knew who Lyman was. He's a successful director of the Bourne movies, starring Matt Damon. He also did, I think, Edge of Tomorrow, American Made, remake of Roadhouse for Amazon. And what does he say? Why was Lyman interested in me? Because I played a role in the Battle of 2018 when a woman named Christine Blasey Ford said that in 1982 I was in the room when she was assaulted by a teenage Brett Kavanaugh. Ford couldn't remember stuff. Her claim was rebuked by people. Then he wrote a book about his experience called The Devil's Triangle, Mark Judge versus the New American Stasi. I reveal what conservatives know, that the media, opposition, researchers, and Hollywood form an American Stasi, similar to the old East German secret police. They used extortion, intimidation, personal threats to destroy the lives of others, ignoring any facts that point away from their narrative. So I told Lyman and crew to get bent. As I wrote recently on Hot Air, I don't write about these things to relive them or to cash in. I do so because the left would like America to forget them, and we shouldn't forget them. More importantly, I do so in order to move forward and build conservative culture and institutions. Had I not euthanized Justice, the movie, it would have played and spread a lot of lies. We should replace it with our own vision. So he talks more about the story here of him contacting him. He says he reveals extortion attempts, death threats, and honey traps in his book. He said, I was their blind spot. They tried to get me to New York, all expenses paid, and gaslight me. He reminded me of when Roman Farrow called me in September 2018 to tell me I was in a letter accusing Brett Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct, but Farrow could not say who the accuser was, only it had taken place in the 80s. So he's basically describing his interactions in politics in 2018, as well as the more recent interactions with these Hollywood types, comparing them together as the Stasi, and revealing that Hollywood often works this way as well. So be careful of them. Kind of stay out of their way if you can. They have nothing good planned. He says he spent 30 minutes blasting this producer. But what I want to get to is, what is his solution? Not just how he blasted Doug Liman, which I'm glad he did. Doug Liman is just a Hollywood director, and they're going to what they want to do is make a narrative. They're not interested in the facts, right? They're interested in their narrative, and whatever facts work to build that narrative is what they're going to put in there. So they've always got this narrative that they're working from the beginning, right? They're not interested really in the true facts. So he said, I laid out all these facts to Lyman and his producers. They realized they're in trouble. There's no way they could make their movie without me and my book. And yet the Devil's Triangle destroyed the premise of their movie. That's why justice will never be seen. He means the movie. When the conversation reached its boiling point, I yelled that they could not show this movie without revealing that I was being extorted and that there was witness tampering going on. The producer asked me who was doing these things, and I told him the names, and he said nothing. He was toast. Meaning that the film is not going to have any traction because he's already got the goods on them. In other words, he could always reveal the goods on why this film is incorrect because he's already written a book about it with actual facts. And his book would actually make a lot of money, if they push the film because the book would counter every argument, right? So it's exciting that he did that because it prevents Hollywood from doing more damage to the public. So he says the death of justice is an opportunity for conservatives. Why not make a film of the Devil's Triangle? It has everything: politics, courtroom drama, sex, skateboarding, Jesuits, and 80s flashbacks. Me and a couple of other writers have even crafted a 20-page treatment outlining how we see the movie. Failing that, conservatives can get behind the anti-communist film festival. It would have a major cultural impact for a small investment to transform Western culture into one that respects life, marriage, and culture that elevates. In order to create a better culture, Anderson writes, we now need culture-forming, opinion-shaping organizations. What might this entail? We might task a small group with studying how other groups have succeeded in their domains. That's what we do here, by the way. And devising a plan for meaningful reforms in new areas. That's what we do here, by the way. What the Federalist Society did to reform the judiciary and what Alliance Defending Freedom has done to create a generation of elite socially conservative lawyers through its Blackstone Legal Fellowship, we need to create for other culture-shaping institutions. So, in other words, create different kinds of organizations for culture-shaping institutions, not just legal institutions, right? This is a daunting task, but if the real root causes of abortion are the sexual practices in which Americans have been habituated for generations, then post-Roe America needs institutions to combat the sexual revolution with the same sophistication that the conservative legal movement brought to overturning Roe. So he says, in addition, some of this work will be intellectual, and conservatives tend to start there. Ideas have consequences, but ideas aren't the only things that have consequences. So too do social practices, habits, virtues, and vices, the movies and TV shows we watch, the music we listen to, and the events the youth ministry and young adult groups sponsor. Our cultural incrementalism can be broad spectrum, new TV shows and movies that aren't hokey after-school specials, policies to protect kids from the harms of social media and online pornography, effective church ministries. The task is enormous. Yeah, he's right. But we haven't devoted enough time, treasure, or sophistication to it. We can learn from the fact that America waged a successful campaign against teen pregnancy, but the result wasn't more marital pregnancies. What would a campaign for marriage look like, even? So he's got a good point there. There's a difference between saying, let's stop having teenage pregnancy and saying, let's have good marriages. What would that look like, right? How can we encourage that? I mean, films about good marriages that aren't just like documentaries or something, or after school specials, like he says, silly stuff. No, sophisticated dramas, narratives that portray men and women who do the right thing as honorable and good, right? I mean, people have talked about this many times, but the tropes we use really matter. Why we use tropes the way we do. Why the Christian minister is always painted as some weirdo. Why the father is always painted as some numbskull. And the kid who wants to do her own thing is always the hero, like the Disney princess. These are the people who need the most guidance, not the ones who should be the most in charge. These kids need the guidance, right? And so Hollywood's tropes have done great harm to the culture. But he's correct. You can't just point this out and then say, isn't that horrible? And then move on. No, no, no. You have to do your work to support new institutions that make good stories happen, that also have good morals, right? So if we're not doing that, we're not doing anything really. Complaining does nothing. So let's see. Anderson concludes that the next Robert George Hadley Arquez, Brad Wilcox, Mark Regnerus, or Leon Cass will not spontaneously emerge. Funny, I don't even know who those people are. Right? This is conservative culture stuff. Like nobody even knows who these people are. I don't even know who they are. Like, right? So that really says something. They must be sought out and supported. All of this will require funding. Oh, does that hurt somebody? Oh no. While we go buy our Netflix and chill, right? That doesn't hurt as much. Yes, it will require funding. And to be blunt, it will require funding of people like me. Too many conservatives in elite positions do not get this. We need punk rock warriors, not just philosophers. In October 2020, when I was struggling after the Kavanaugh nightmare, the conservative scholar Joseph Bottom sent out a tweet. The treatment of Mark Judge was awful, and the failures of those who published him to defend him was among the most despicable. So he ends up washing dishes. Bottom was responding to the news that I had taken a job washing dishes. Writing in National Review in 2021, editor Charles Cook recounts the 2018 attack on Kavanaugh. Sometime soon, the hideous standards that were crafted and reinforced by those attempting to bring down Kavanaugh will be used against someone with no power, money, name recognition, or institutional backing. In fact, those hideous standards were already deployed against someone without power, money, name recognition, or institutional standards. That person was me. Of course, this is Mark Judge talking. Outside of the corridors of conservative power, shunned by a lot of conservative media, I spiked a Hollywood hit job and launched an anti-communist film festival. It's probably just the 80s do-it-yourself punk rock kid in me, but conservatives need to stop talking and writing white papers and start supporting the 300 Spartans in the trenches. And he's right. We have to start supporting these people. I would even say we have to do even more than he's saying. One festival, one film based on a book. This is not enough. You have to support an entire movement, right? You have to support new studio heads to make new studios. You have to support new platforms like Angel Studios or Daily Wire or Blaise TV. I don't know what Blaise TV is doing these days, or Loor TV, right? In fact, Loor TV has a trailer out, I think that I just saw recently. Let's see if I can share this trailer. Boom. Here's Loor TV. See, Loor TV, entertainment built different. The first streaming service where you decide what's seen. You can green light. When you subscribe, you get 1,200 silver loot. every week to fund the projects you want to see to get made and premiere on Loor TV. You can boost, give the shows you believe in an added boost by buying as much gold loot as you want so they fund and go live faster. Watch. Once a show is funded, it's ready to watch or begin production. Build. Help build our community by inviting friends. We'll thank you with free loot for every friend that signs up. See what people like you are funding. So these are all the stuff that they're funding right now. Many of them are possibly good, possibly not so good, possibly stuff made by small independent filmmakers. Barely Biblical has some fun animation. I've seen that. The Psalter looks very intellectual, maybe. A little bit of an indie vibe. Esoterra looks like an indie action movie kind of thing. This is a sci-fi. I don't know much about these. So there's a lot of them here, and then there's stuff they've already got to watch, right? Gothics, documentary on Gothics, pro-life Spider-Man, Behind the Beards and Bikes, American Life is a comedy show, I'm Not a Robot, feature film. Some of the Psalter is out now, 3 episodes. Fleur de Lis is fun. I really like Fleur de Lis. Dark Holler is a horror web series, and there's Barely Biblical, 2 episodes of Barely Biblical. And they've got these other things too. Exposed has some good pro-life material there, and there's some documentary stuff. This is all stuff you can watch there now. But what did I want to show you? I wanted to show you a trailer they've got out, just came out on Safe Society. This is an AI assisted show. So they use some AI video, but their audio is really the sound design they do is really quite impressive on it. So get ready. Here we go.
Has he president in American
We can avoid such dangers of inequality.
We here are in a position to save everyone.
Cases climb.
Anti-vaxxers choosing selfishness.
Everyone, in a mass, sanitizer dispensers at every corner.
Personalized to your microbiome.
Listen to the science.
Happy birthday to you.
6 feet apart, 6 feet apart, 6 feet.
5 times 6.
They need to learn as soon as possible how to become adults that play their part as conscientious citizens.
Unbalanced amount of unsanitary white flesh color.
Be the protectors, cyberpeace.
Stop crying my eyes! No!
We have the answers to solve the real dangers of climate catastrophe.
Justice is the name. Then it's good destruction.
Revolution is never ready.
Your time is up.
Wow. What did you think?
Well, that's pretty horrific. Um, it does sound really interesting that they're going to release it as an audio experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's pretty cool, like a radio play.
Yeah, possibly. I think that they'll have this AI video to accompany it, essentially.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little dark for me, but it looks interesting. Looks well made.
Yeah. It's almost like some of us lived through that.
Yeah.
So some people want to make real art that talks about real issues in our society, and some people just don't want to do that. They want to talk about their political stuff. They want to talk about stuff that makes them feel happy, right? But that looks like something that's about a subject that a lot of people want to ignore or want to put in the past and say, oh, that doesn't matter now. We should just forget about that. But that says something really deeply telling about our society right now.
Mm.
Not just what happened, right, in 2020, but now how people are reacting to it.
Yeah.
You know, how they don't want to deal with it and talk about it. I wonder why that is. Okay, so these are some of the people that are trying to do things right now and they're seeking funding. So who are some of the other people doing this? There's another company, I mentioned Daily Wire as well. They are also working on some stuff. Here we go. This is Daily Wire on X. So they just put this out today, which is a short video on new films that they're putting out and new stuff that they're doing. So Daily Wire had put out a new video today with supposedly new films, new series, new documentaries. It says get ready for entertainment that actually matters. Here's what's coming to Daily Wire in October.
We had an opportunity to disrupt what became 9/11.
It's coming at your kids whether you like it or not.
It wasn't if it was going to happen, it was when the United States was going to be attacked.
These people are trying to talk to my daughter.
Edward?
I'm not Edward. I'm a demon.
The whole purpose behind this is to overturn Western civilization. Bin Laden was getting very antsy.
Yeah. So some of that stuff might excite some people. Yeah, I was hoping for what Daily Wire was doing some time ago when they talked about doing more narrative stuff, more like feature films and more like shows that are entertaining that contain within them embedded Western values, right? And were things that would draw the Hollywood crowd over to conservative media, like action movies and horror movies and dramas and building new stars and celebrities and building new content to talk about, right? That people want to talk about. And instead, and I'm not saying they're doing a bad job here. I'm glad that they're releasing new content. I really am glad that they are finally talking again about releasing new stuff. But it looks like, documentary stuff. It's all political. It's all stuff that if you're not already a sold out conservative, you're just not interested in watching. You're probably not going to watch it. Right. So they're digging into the niche to an extreme degree. Right. And that includes the format. There's nothing narratively there, but they are sharing Nefarious. I'm glad for their licensing Nefarious, right? Which is pure entertainment. It's a horror thriller from a Christian perspective and about possession. And so that's interesting. Like in a way, it almost belongs more on Angel though now, because Daily Wire has so little of this kind of content now that it almost just stands out from the rest of that content, which was all political. The 1916 Project, political. They even put their own shows, their celebrities, Daily Wire, talking heads. They have their own shows, and they had to include those shows right in the what's coming, because they have so little of new content. They have to include all their old shows in there too, to kind of fill out right the offerings that they have. And I wish that they could just focus on new stuff totally, but they just don't seem to have enough new stuff, right? I mean, this is a channel, this is a streaming platform that dedicated $200 million to children's entertainment with Benke. All it takes to get a good, interesting film out that can get some conversation going is like $5 million. Like that's something like that, right? You produce the film for 2.5 million. You put 2.5 million to like distribution and stuff like that, and talking about the film, and you've got a film that could go into the Oscars or something. I mean, if you're going to do an Oscars campaign, that's another investment, but it's got potential, right? What you need is a celebrity, and you need an interesting a writer to do some storytelling. Andrew Clavin is a writer. I've never read any of his books, but don't we believe he could write a script for a film? Why has he not done that? Why are they not interested in doing that? We saw Jeremy Boring produce Lady Ballers, this comedy, and this was not a badly made film. It's not, it wasn't like Mel Brooks level comedy, right? It's more like the level of a lot of Hollywood comedies from today, which obviously are not all that great right now. Hollywood mostly cannot make comedies now. But this was at least at that level, because at least the jokes were more relevant, right? The jokes were more interesting. The quality wasn't as high, but the jokes were high. It was almost like Idiocracy a little bit. So they've all obviously got potential at Daily Wire to make more culture building content. But my point there is that I wish that they would not just dig into the politics and dig into the culture building. And I think that they need to do that more. Hopefully they will be building another branding streaming platform, another branded streaming platform like Benki, that is for more like adult entertainment, like Netflix or something. That would probably be a good idea, instead of like investing a ton of money into one show or investing a ton of money into one thing. Invest 20 million into feature films, like, and then maybe try to license it, right? Maybe try to license it, and then put it on your platform after it's been licensed, but there's a lot of avenues they could go to affect the culture, instead of just putting everything in their walled garden on the Daily Wire platform and not doing anything that gets attention, you know. Um, so that's Daily Wire. Is there other stuff? Yeah, sure, there's other stuff out there. Let's see. I did talk about Angel a little bit before.
It makes sense to me that Angel wouldn't have a movie like Nefarious.
Yeah, that's true. They're more for families, I guess.
Yeah, that seems to be the direction they're going in.
Mm-hmm.
Is more family type stuff. Or I don't know if it's family type stuff, but like, the after after death near death experiences. That movie, I don't know if that was a family movie, but it wasn't really that dark. It wasn't like a horror movie. And Daily Wire, they do have Terror on the Prairie, which was supposed to be a horror movie, right?
It's like a Western with
Yeah.
like a very violent Western.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you've seen Bone Tomahawk, it's a pretty violent Western, but it's got some contemplativeness to it, some Hollywood lulls. But I mean, the problem was there was not a lot, that film wasn't really saying a lot culturally. It was just watching, it was kind of like Shut In the sense that it was just watching someone go through a difficult situation. But let's take a look at Angel here. So yeah, I do think that Daily Wire needs to get some different kind of content if they really want to make a difference. That's not just in journalism and politics. And so culture is upstream of politics, and I think they need to make a difference in the culture. A lot of people like Angel Studios for that purpose, but who are the best people here besides Daily Wire that are doing things? Angel and Loor. We talked about Loor here as well, right? They have a lot of other content here. Sure, it might not be everybody's deal, but Angel is doing something similar, but they're big enough now. They're one of the top 10 theatrical distributors now in the world. So that's quite impressive. They've only been around a few years doing this. And so how did they make so much of an impact so quickly? Because they produce the kind of content that Hollywood's not producing, right? Hollywood's not interested in stuff that's really making a difference socially in the culture, right? What Hollywood wants to do is talk about their propaganda projects. And so what is Angel doing now? Well, here's new and upcoming, coming soon. Miracle, you mentioned After Death, right? That movie that Angel put out in theaters like maybe 2 years ago, something like that. Well, Miracle is a series that looks to be very similar to After Death.
Great. Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, then there's Quokka's Wildlife. I'm not sure. I don't know much about this one right now. Luckiest Man on Earth, Cokeville Miracle. I heard about that movie from Truth About RFK Jr. Looks like a documentary. Escape from Germany. 79 missionaries flee Germany or Hitler invades Poland. Disciples in the Moonlight. So it's a futuristic dystopian. Not sure if it's a film or a series.
Yeah.
Truth and Treason coming to theaters October 17th. Thank you, Dr. Fauci. Yeah. Indivisible. Wing Feather Saga coming. Season 3 is coming November 12th, looks like. Wayfinders coming in December. I really liked that pilot episode.
Yeah, I did too.
Homestead, the series. Hopefully they'll be coming out with more content soon. Zero AD coming in December as well, which looks like a really good film. Then there's that. Looks like it's about immigrants. Not sure if I agree with the politics that might show up in there. Beyond the Metal, Home to Harmony. Some of those are just far away. By the way, Solo Mio is a, what is the comedian's name? Kevin James. Angel's going to be releasing a Kevin James romantic comedy. That's pretty exciting. So this is what we've been needing. We've been needing Hollywood celebs being stars in these kinds of films. This new generation of filmmakers who are making great stuff. So that's a little exciting. Yeah. Solo Mio. Let's see. I think I was going to share. Yeah, A Week Away is out right now. RFK Legacy. Some of these are comedy ones. So these are all Testament. It has been a real surprise. A lot of people love Testament right now. Last Rodeo was decent. It's good. It's for men, right? Not a lot of content from men right now from Hollywood. King of Kings was good. Great for kids. Wayfinders, Live Not by Lies. So this Live Not by Lies, the guy here, Rod Dreher, who wrote the book that this is based on, he could end up in the Anti-Communist Film Festival. This series could end up there because it's 100% anti-communist, and it goes in depth on how to fight communism. It's quite good, by the way, this series.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. And it is a documentary style series. So let me tell you though, guys, why does Daily Wire fail where these two, Angel and Loor, succeed? In my view, it's because these guys, number one, they're focused more on culture. Angel's focused more on culture, right? Making good storytelling. And sketch was fun, by the way. Our kids really love watching. They'll just watch the trailer over and over. They like Wing Feather, Young David. That went over to 5 and 2 Studios, by the way. 5 and 2 is a growing studio as well. So a lot of the reason I like Angel and Loor, and the reason I talk about them, is because the reason that these guys are doing more relevant stuff and making more of it is because they do crowdfunding, guys. Crowdfunding is when you directly go to your audience and ask them to support your project, right? And if you really care about a project, you can fund it. Now, if Daily Wire had some kind of way to facilitate that happening, Daily Wire would be producing a lot more stuff. But I don't think that they could do that. I think that their platform is too restrictive. So what Angel does particularly well is connecting with their audience, right? They have various ways to connect with their audience even on their website, right? Just the fact that they allow you to talk about their films here, in these little short movies. That's a way to connect with your audience. But much more importantly, they do fundraising for their projects, right? So, you can submit your project here. If you're a filmmaker, submit your project. You can receive a guild score. Then they score. What they do is they ask, does this project amplify light? And if people vote yes, then they start funding for it. So they have a baseline requirement. It's got to be a positive, uplifting project that they think will help literally be positive for people to watch. That's a pretty great place to start and to kind of narrow the field when you're getting a ton of submissions, right? You get enough submissions, it's going to overwhelm them. So acceptable submissions, submit a torch or an episode or a completed film, right? Send them $250. They will process it and get back to you. There's got requirements, general rules, no nudity, etc., etc. These are just good basic requirements. And look at that. Look how great their site is. Like, they got all the information you need here to make it happen.
Yeah, they communicate really well.
They really do. These guys are marketing experts. See, they even give you example. These are torches that pass the guild.
Mm.
You get examples to learn from. Why do this? Like, these guys know what they're doing. And then what do they do when they're doing fundraising for a project? What happens? Like, they start putting their trailer and their torch on the platform. People can watch it, people can rate it, and then they can they enter a round of funding, right? When that round is completed, then often when it's completed or right before it's completed, they'll have a live stream on YouTube. And they'll talk about their project. Maybe the director or the producer or somebody will talk about their project and connect with their supporters, right? And their fans, and tell you what's going on. And that could happen every few months, where a filmmaker gets to connect with their fans. And this just continues growing and growing and growing. It's snowballing until they have enough money to produce their feature or their short segmented series. And many of their projects they've actually brought to theaters now. Where Hollywood has shunned theaters and said, oh no, theaters is an outdated model. Angel said, okay, you're leaving that money on the table. We're just going to take that money. You don't want that money? Okay, we'll take it. Because actually the research shows that theaters are not dead. People actually will be willing to take their, maybe take their families or take their kids out to a family, film, the kind of film that Hollywood is no longer trustworthy in making. And people don't necessarily want to see a Disney movie anymore, because Disney wants to kind of give up that audience and let it go. They really are leaving money on the table, right? Because there is still a fairly large audience that will do that. But you have to make the kind of content that they want to see. And so even if you spend the 20,000 or so to get to do a theatrical campaign, if you make the right project, you'll get that money back. And Angel has shown that to be the case. So the thing is, they have a strong curation process, and they have a strong fan building platform. So with that engagement happening and the brilliance of their marketing, they're actually doing well. They're now in the top 10 theatrical distributors. Their platform is just buzzing with content. And I mean, they've even got and just go to comedy. They've got a ton of stuff here. A lot of these are just comedy specials, but doesn't everybody enjoy comedy specials? And then drama. Look at all this content. Imagine if Daily Wire had all this. Imagine if they had all this. Imagine if Loor had all this. Right? Loor's on their way, right? They're well on their way. But with the requirements here of just does it amplify light, which isn't as strict, but it's definitely stricter than Hollywood, right? And there's people who really just want to make good content for families and for regular people. Some of these are faith-based. Some of them are just good for families and well made. Lost on a Mountain in Maine. That was good. This was a good movie. The Shift was good. It was really decent. Cabrini was good. These two got theatrical releases, right? Lost on a Mountain in Maine could have had a theatrical release. Might have done okay. Sight did okay. It was a little more faith-based, which that genre is kind of going out of a style, I think. Homestead was decent. Brave the Dark. I actually haven't seen Brave the Dark yet. I need to see that one. Sound of Freedom I think that was really the film that did it for Angel. See, that film blew people away. It was for men who want to make a difference in the world. It was against an obvious evil in the world that Hollywood doesn't talk about. And because Hollywood hated it too, it just made it more popular. It just blew it out of the park. I think they made a mistake by having Sound of Hope, Possum Trot, because that looked like a good film, but I don't think it was in the same vein as Sound of Freedom. I don't think it was for the same audience. So I think that's why, in other words, it wasn't for men, right? It was more for the faith-based audience. And I think that was a marketing mistake on their part. But if they did, they could have definitely done Sound of Freedom 2 and made a really big difference with that. If it was action-oriented or thriller-ish for men, I think that would have done really well. The fact they just don't make enough content for men is really a serious oversight on the part of Hollywood. And I think even Angel could do better there. Because there's just such a small amount of, it's kind of like the publishing right now, how like 80-90% of writers are women now. That's not like, don't quote me on that, but it's like it's a big problem. Where there's not a lot of books for men right now. See, they even have the faith-based genre here. Some of these will overlap with what we just saw. Mosaic was good. So I would advise, like even though we saw this article, we read this article from Mark Judge, right? And he talks about making the kind of content that would make a difference. I think that might be true, especially if Daily Wire got involved with that, because that's a more political project. So sadly, I think Mark Judge is not 100% correct. I think he needs to think about culture being upstream of politics and how we need more culture building, not just political narrative. And stuff like Angel and Loor are going to make a bigger difference than the Daily Wire stuff that's being made now. Sure, a lot of Daily Wire stuff's good. I think that, like Matt Walsh's documentary, What's a Woman and Am I Racist? Those really, but you know what made them so great? It wasn't even the political issue that he talks about. It's the comedy. Like the fact that he skewers it so effectively, that's what makes them popular. So they could continue producing comedies, in my view, that don't even have to be politically related. In fact, the less politically related they are, the better. You could maybe feature one political issue, right? Like the movie, for example, the movie Idiocracy. It is a cult classic now. Everybody knows about that movie now. Brondo, it's what plants crave, I think, is the quote. It only really discusses a few small political issues, if any, which is that our society just keeps getting dumber. Like, and eventually it's going to make politics even dumber and dumber to absurd levels if we continue going in the direction we're going. And Idiocracy just does that. It just takes that concept and goes with it as far as it can go. And it really does have a big impact, right? But instead what we do is we drill down into some issue and we don't have fun with it, right? We don't engage, therefore, then with the culture more directly, with stuff that the audience actually wants. We're just kind of satisfying our kind of intellectual need to explain some issue in the world. Society mostly doesn't want to do that. I'll be honest, society really doesn't want to do that. What society wants is a well-told story that has meaning. And it's made with craftsmanship. And I've learned this as a Christian, right? That faith-based media is a great example of what not to do, right? Because it's too propagandistic. It doesn't care about really what society wants to see, right? Which is, again, great storytelling with craftsmanship, right? It could be about some current issue as well, but you've got to couch that in something well made. And when you can't do that, it's really not going to have the impact, right? People aren't going to say it's brilliant. because it's just not brilliant filmmaking. If you're going to make film, be a brilliant filmmaker, right? Don't just put a little bit of camera work into your political propaganda. No, really try to engage the culture on the level that it's at. You know, you want people to enjoy watching it. You don't want people to just be disturbed and disgusted when they're watching. No, you really don't want that. Matt Walsh he's actually enjoyable to watch, right? So that's what makes it work. So that's my challenge to you guys. I think that finding these crowdfunding platforms that are going to make stuff that's really impactful, like I'm seeing Lord TV just grow as like almost like a Christian horror platform, maybe, because some of the horror stuff they make is pretty decent. I haven't seen a lot of the comedy stuff on there. And Fleur de Lis is good, so there is some comedy that's decent. And Fleur de Lis is an example, right, of how to do this because it doesn't talk about politics at all. It's just fun little, stuff in New Orleans with these little characters, and that's all it is. It's just a lot of fun. And there's interesting characters and they do weird, silly things. This is a Christian platform. They don't talk about God even in Fleur de Lis. But there's a married couple and they love each other, and they take care of each other. And then they go through funny, silly things, them and their friends. So it's a little zany, but and then there's Barely Biblical that they do. And that's all about stuffed teddy bears committing violent acts that the Bible tells us about. So it's kind of like saying, well, if you don't want to see actual violent acts happening, but you do want to get biblical stories that have meaning, maybe you'll watch a teddy bear, like, like get their head ripped off or something. I don't know. And now it doesn't have to be grotesque. And I think that concept is kind of brilliant. So yeah, I mean, what do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, it looks pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What I can't wait is for Laura to get a app so we could watch it on our TV. Because they still don't have an app yet. That's
Yeah.
going to be exciting when they get an app.
Yeah, that would be great to watch some of that stuff on the Roku.
Yep.
Um, yeah, there's a lot more content on Angel than I realized as you were
Oh
going
yeah.
through it. A lot more
There's a
stuff
ton
on
of.
there that looks pretty good. And even more stuff on Lore than I realized that I'm curious about that I want to
Mhm.
check out.
Yeah, what Lore needs is a good hit series that just surprises people.
Hmm.
Then once they get that, and then it's behind a paywall, that's going to make a really big difference for them. Yeah, lore doesn't have as much as Angel, it's true. But what they do have is exciting. It's a place that you can see growth. Like it's like watching a kid grow up. It's just like there's flashes of brilliance in there, but not a ton yet. But soon I think it'll surprise you. There'll be a growth spurt in there.
Yeah, definitely.
They really are kind of like a punk rock group, garage band right now.
Yeah, I could see that.
Hmm. And that's kind of what Mark Judge was saying, wasn't he? We need the conservative punk rock guys, not the establishment, stuff that's just the same as what Hollywood puts out, or the stuff that's not really engaging the culture, you know. So I think that, it's gonna be the right investors teamed up with the right creators. And, just like how it kind of always happens within the art movement, there's somebody who sees brilliance somewhere that nobody else sees yet, and then they become the benefactor of that artist. They provide them with enough to start creating. And then at a certain point, yeah, look, they've created something that's undeniable, and that benefactor gets the lion's share of those profits, you know? But hopefully they continue building after that and they don't just kind of like shut it down or there's some issue, which seems like that happened with Daily Wire. I'm not sure what happened there with Jeremy Boring, but it seems like at a certain point there was a speed bump or something. They're, you know, flying too close to the sun or something. Who knows? But yeah, these platforms need to be careful to stay focused on their mission, and then we need the right investors who will invest in the right projects. So again, guys, this is crowdfunding. If you want to find the right projects, instead of just putting it in one platform and then hoping the platform comes out with great stuff, support the literal single project that you like. And just like Loor is doing and Angel's doing, you could invest as much as you want in that project, which it'll make it happen much quicker. So what you're doing then is you're helping cultivate an artist in his craft, right? So I would cultivate the most skilled conservative Christian artist you can find. Just find that person and cultivate that relationship. And if you can do that, that's going to make a huge difference because that ship raises all ships around him. You know, it says it can be done. We can make art, and we can make art that makes a difference. For Angel, I think that was Sound of Freedom. And so they just need another one of those hits to keep the momentum going. It can happen. They need to just find the right filmmaker who wants to make another kind of action-y thriller for men, and they can tap into that market then, and bam, get another theatrical hit. You know, they need like a Predator movie or something, like something interesting like that. That's also got a good hero that has morals, right?
Yeah.
That's going to make a big difference.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people care about this. Mark Judge cares about this, and we do too. You know, if we don't care about this stuff, it really says something, and that's how the culture crumbles. So we don't want that to happen. But we'll wrap it up. And where can people find you, Rebecca?
You can find me writing on Substack, and that's just Rebecca Croft on Substack, and also on YouTube at Rebecca Loves Jesus. And what about you, John? Where can people find more about what you're doing?
Yes, of course, you can find me here on YouTube, but also MediaMoses.com. We haven't been producing as much lately. Getting ready for our big move to a studio somewheres. And Media Moses Weekly is also experiencing a lull as well in production, but that's okay. You can find me on X at John Croft or at the Media Moses. And you can find me on YouTube, like I said, and Substack as well. A little bit there. Not as much going on there as well, but I am doing stuff. Don't worry. Getting stuff done. All right, guys. Love you. And remember to give a salute to the culture builders out there who are making life worth living. Have a good weekend. Love you guys.